So with many of the both the admissions panels, but certainly the careers panels that we have for the CentreCourt Festival, of course, we're talking about this ability to pivot, make that sort of career transition. We often talk about the triple jumpers, those that not only changed where they pursued the next steps of their professional lives, but they changed sector, they changed function. And I'm delighted to welcome Lauren Krainski, who is a product marketing manager at Facebook. She's also a graduate of Washington Foster from the class of 2018. And as I'll be discovering with Lauren, had a very different professional trajectory before going to business school. Lauren, thank you very much for joining us from Seattle.
Thank you.
And a sun-filled day. You did tell me that the myth of rain in Seattle is hopelessly misguided, right?
It is. But don't tell everyone that.
So you know, coming out of school in Pittsburgh, you'd studied economics and marketing and enjoyed a career that included 3.5 years with Deloitte. You were with Alcoa, so the consultants and building a great career. What then led to the idea of business school at that point?
Sure. So in my consulting career, a lot of the folks with whom I worked had gone to top business school. So I had a lot of context for the value and just like the general business sense that one can gain from going to business school. So I always had kind of seen it on my roadmap in some capacity. My decision to actually go for it was based on the fact, frankly, that I wanted to, I guess, in a way, do this triple jump. I wanted to pivot from consulting for a variety of reasons. I wanted to move to Seattle because we really adore it here. And I also wanted to change industries. Prior to Foster, I was working in an internal strategy role at Alcoa, which was a wonderful experience. But for me, I wanted to work in more of a growth industry versus manufacturing. And so that was one of the reasons why I thought business schools could support that pivot too.
Now, of course, Foster has been a growth story itself, as it sort of works its way up the rankings. There's more than just good coffee in Seattle. It's become a real hub for tech and aviation, many other things. Why specifically Foster? You talked about the appeal of Seattle. What was it about the school itself that also then appealed?
Sure. So Foster really checked those 3 boxes for me. And over the years prior to actually applying for Foster, I had toured all the usual suspect top East Coast business schools. And so I had a lot of context for kind of the culture that they drove, where, what industries and companies they recruited into and so forth. And those were also 2 really key elements for me. I really wanted to make sure that at the point in my career at which I was applying, that the transition, kind of like the exit path, would clearly align with what I wanted. And also the culture would kind of also align with what I wanted. So Foster specifically, I think at the time, 55% of graduates were going into a tech role, many of whom were going into product-related tech roles. And Foster has the best reach of any business school in Seattle. And as I was saying earlier, we really wanted to be here. We think this is an amazing city to live in and have a career in, kind of based on our interests. And so Foster really, to me, was the best positioned school to help me get to what my end goal was. And then separately, from a cultural perspective, I found through the recruiting or admissions process, and then while I was there, that the community that Foster had, given especially that it's a small school, was totally different than any other school that I had looked at. I felt like, it was both competitive while being collaborative, very like kind of going through the experience and supporting each other together was I think the core of the experience there, or the core of the culture. And also just building actual friendships versus, just having professional relationships. And that was really what I was seeking, as I was looking to build a community and then, of course, network in the city that I planned to live in after school.
Right.
So those were really
presumably some of that networking actually began, during the program, not just with your classmates. But I find it very interesting that perhaps with both an in-house company project with Amazon and then the summer internship that you then did with Deutsche Bank, quite disparate choices that have ultimately led to the product marketing manager role you now have with Facebook. Was that just that opportunity then to explore different institutions and different career paths?
Absolutely. I think that, when you're going to the MBA, you have to have some openness to trying things. It's really the only time, one of the few times I should say, in your career where you really have the opportunity to try things out that you wouldn't otherwise even have the chance to do so. So for example, I was a Forte Fellow, which the Forte Foundation is a group to place high-performing women in leadership roles in companies. And I had attended the Forte Leadership Conference prior to Foster. And at that point, I was, again, just really trying to explore what could be next for the sake of having this opportunity to explore and build a relationship with Deutsche. Actually got an internship offer prior to going to business school, and had to make a choice even before I started classes. Is this how I'm going to spend my summer? And it was a really difficult decision. But, I was able to actually engage with Foster faculty in career management before starting school to help me think through that decision, which I thought was like kind of a testament to the community and personalized help that Foster gives. But I landed on, I don't think I'll ever have the opportunity to do something like this again in my life. So therefore, I'm going to go do that and then, find ways at Foster. So for example, via working with Amazon through one of Foster's core classes to do product management like things in tech, I thought that would be a good way to kind of like diversify my experiences and actually get better signal from truly trying things of what I wanted to do next.
Of course, this one very well-lived life that we're all offered, and perhaps your belief that we could all be living to 200. You run a podcast that looks at how technologies could push the boundaries of that sort of radical life extension. At a personal level, what do you feel that you learned about yourself beyond the business skills that were obviously part of Foster's core curriculum?
It's a great question. I think what I have learned about myself, and I had this, I think one of the challenges that I had before business school was really understanding, like, as a consultant, you are by nature a generalist. And sometimes I had difficulty thinking about, okay, how do I really apply these generalist skills to my next career path? And what is really the value in that? And I feel like through my experience at Foster and through, having various experiences on Wall Street with Amazon, with, oh, by the way, right after business school, I was making investments in AI companies through an AI startup incubator. That kind of my ability to be a chameleon and understand disparate things quickly is actually a superpower of mine, versus something that, may otherwise be like, I think, like, how do I apply the generalist skills? So that was one of really kind of like the so what's that business school brought me, was that, being able to do this actually is a skill. It actually does add a lot of value, and a lot of the experiences that I gained through Foster really helped me test and validate that. And also provided, I think, some glue to, help further build out, the kind of generalist value that someone like myself could bring to an organization.
As you started your business school journey, those tentative steps, visiting schools on the East Coast, having an idea that Seattle in the back of your mind, working with the Forte Foundation, we can look at many elements that the MBA brings. How important is it that the self-confidence that it brings, to then recognize your superpower or just have that confidence with the next steps that you have determinedly taken with your career?
I mean, that's a good question. I still struggle with imposter syndrome all the time. So, I mean, it certainly does bring confidence, like through, for example, kind of like the demand that you hear from the market, like from, the companies that come on campus for the skills that you are gaining through the MBA. Definitely, in my opinion, did build a lot of confidence. And I think, given the many opportunities to have to like quickly synthesize information and either pitch it back to a company. So in the case of Amazon, or any number of consulting or internship opportunities that you can do during Foster, because I think one of the awesome things about Foster is there's some flexibility in the curriculum that allows students to have many different types of independent studies, and usually those manifest themselves in students working directly with various organizations around the city, to help continue to build either that confidence, do more reps to build the professional skills that they're seeking to do. And so I definitely think those were ways how the MBA built some confidence in my skills. But, I think I still struggle with this. This is not a good answer, but I still struggle.
I don't want to overly
right now.
imposter syndrome, but I think there's potentially a very interesting insight to then share in applying to business school, because of course you're sharing background, accomplishments, who you are, and for the admissions office at Foster to see that potential in you. So with that humility, the modesty that you naturally have, what would your advice be to future applicants to these top schools?
Sure. So what I would really recommend is identifying what's important to you as an individual, both on a personal level and a professional level. Scrap the rankings and identify schools that fit. Like, for example, when I toured the usual suspect schools, as I said, I did that because I basically went down the list of, whatever ranking and thought, okay, because these are ranked as they are, these are the schools that I should be looking at. And that's, of course, not to say that they don't provide amazing experiences. But again, for me, I really wanted to work in tech, and I really wanted to live in Seattle. And I also really wanted a school where I could thrive in a culture that really fit my needs, which was to build long-lasting relationships and do so in a collaborative environment. And Foster was the school that checked those boxes for me. I did not, for example, see knowing where I wanted to be, and then knowing that, for example, if I went to school outside of Seattle, I would have to spend 2 years somewhere else and then try to get to Seattle via a couple of companies that naturally recruit here, versus coming here, building my networking community in the place that I already wanted to live. That seemed like a more direct and strategic path for me. But it took a while for me to get there. I mean, I probably started visiting business schools, casually in 2012. And it wasn't until I applied, which would have been in fall 2015, for entry in 2016, that I actually, executed on that. But felt very confident when I did that, and was able to kind of really tell my story authentically when I applied and when I interviewed and so forth.
Great. Well, thank you for telling your story as part of the CentreCourt Festival. You're the senior staff from Foster are with us on the admissions and the careers panels. I think you're a wonderful example of what the school is able to offer, and that collaborative culture that you described so well. So, Lauren, thank you for your time in very busy and unusual parts of our lives. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.